Welcome back to Entertainment Talk. Today I'm here to do another season review. This is going to be for the second season of Afterlife on Netflix from Ricky Gervais, of course. I'm your host Matthew, and we're going to start off with spoiler free. We'll go into spoilers in the second half of the podcast, and I'll give you a warning when we get there, so don't worry about spoilers yet. But let's start off with some spoiler free, not even impressions, just a spoiler free review, I suppose. I think this is another work of art from Ricky Gervais. I think this is another masterpiece, as you can see from the title, which you probably would have read if you've clicked on this review. But Ricky Gervais just continues to knock it out the park for me with pretty much all the things that he's created. The only thing he's made, which I haven't seen all the way through, is extras, but I am slowly currently sort of watching that. So I've seen all the other things that he's made, and this joins the stack of just excellent stuff that he's made. Of course, this is the second season of Afterlife. I did review the first season, I believe it was around this point last year, so that was excellent as well. I mean, this season's more about not moving on, but trying to move on. You can see from this season, I'm going to bring up like themes and things in the spoiler-free section. I don't really think that that's spoilery to sort of do that, but I think given him kind of how he was all angry last season and that sort of thing in the first season, I think with this season, him trying to sort of change himself as a character, him trying to sort of move on and not just being like, okay, I'm over it, I'm moving on. He's not over what has happened and his feelings and things like that, but he's certainly attempting to move on, and I think that was a very interesting way to go for this second season, and I think it's done really, really well. Again, Ricky just continues to have this ability to somehow literally in the same scenes make you choke up and then laugh seconds later, and then choke up and then laugh, but it's not done in like a flip-floppy sort of, we don't know what tone we're going for. This tone that the show's going for, which is bittersweet and sort of sadness, I suppose, because there's sad things have certainly happened in the show, of course, but it's trying to go for that sort of, okay, we're sad, but we can still not have a laugh, but we can still get on with things a little bit and somewhat have it's sort of like, when someone's like really, really upset or something, and they find a way to bring that positivity through. I think that there's a fine line there as well. There's a way that Ricky could have written this, because obviously it's written, directed, and starring Ricky Gervais and all that, created by Ricky Gervais. There's a way he could have written the show so much worse, to where it would have felt like it flip-flopped with those two emotions, and those two emotions really are completely opposite. That sort of happiness that you do see in the show, and it's not always happiness that is built off of the bittersweet stuff in the show. It's happiness as well that are things that are flat out funny, and then you get scenes where, okay, this is really sad and kind of depressing in certain ways, in different ways, and it really takes some skill to write that. Like, I don't know how underrated this show is maybe considered. I mean, it's trending number one on Netflix. It's being talked about online by a bunch of people. Sure, there's people that don't like Ricky Gervais. That's fine, whatever. I love his creations and all that, and all the work that he's done. I think he's an amazing talent in this industry. There's just a way he could have written this that could have just been so much worse and not clicked. And there's a very, very fine line when you're writing something like this, because sometimes when somebody would maybe attempt to write something like this, they would go all one way or all the other, to where like it doesn't try to balance those two different emotions, and you really got to give him credit for pulling off the skill to be able to do that, because it's just not easy to do that at all, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that, which I think he's gotten a massive amount of credit for, to be fair. It's not like the show's gone like unnoticed or something, but it's I mean, how would you describe Ricky Gervais's audience? I mean, it is fairly big, it is very dedicated, but I think he's done very, very well with the things that he's made so far, and this just goes along with that as well. Moving on with the theme of attempting to move on, and seeing how Tony, of course, Ricky's character, attempts to do that, and how that affects the people around him, and how it sort of, because this is definitely more of a character-driven show than a story-driven, because he works at a newspaper, he goes around taking photos of people that are giving them stories, and that's essentially his job. And then you've got his home life, of course, with the nice little dog and all that. And then you've got basically the, I guess, flashback progression with Tony watching the videos of his wife and stuff, which is, I mean, it's sort of flashback. I mean, he's watching videos from the past. I don't know if you'd necessarily call that flashback, but I mean, there is certain flashback at certain points as well, to certain things, but that all kind of feeds into itself. I think he's done another fantastic job at that as well. But no, I really really enjoyed it. It's absolutely flew by this second season. I think even more so than the first. Maybe I watched it at the same pace. I watched basically 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Couldn't quite get the podcast out yesterday, and now it's Tuesday. So that's exactly the same way I watched the first season. I watched 2 on Friday, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday, and then I believe I did the review on the Monday or whatever it was before. But I mean, this joins Netflix's category of short and sweet again. Things like The Kingdom, things like I'm Not Okay With This, 2 recent kind of examples of those. 6 episodes, 30 minutes. You get in, you tell your story, you still fill it with plenty of emotion. I mean, goodness, if you don't think that there's emotion in this show, I don't really know what to tell you. But yeah, you get in there, 6 episodes, because it's only around 3 hours total of footage that you got. Some episodes like 32 minutes, some are like 25 or whatever, but around about 3 hours, which I know is like, you know, the length of quite a long film. It's almost the length of what, Avengers Endgame or something, but for TV, it's just a bit different, isn't it? I mean, I was on episode 4 at one point. I was like, oh wow, I'm already over halfway through the series, so it absolutely flew by. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Very very emotional stuff. But yeah, I'm also quite impressed with, without spoiling things, how they took some of the smaller characters this season and developed them. Like, genuinely surprised me, because I didn't really expect that. Because I thought that the series would mainly lean on I mean, it does lean on this, but it leans more also on some of the side characters this season. But it definitely leans on, like, okay, Ricky's had his immediate kind of grievance, I suppose you could say, because he's obviously he's not over Lisa. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say or whatever. But he's now got past the first stage, possibly, is what I mean. And now he's attempting to move on. So I think that's done really, really well as well. But yeah, excellent acting, excellent directing and writing, and just everything. So it's another big hit from Ricky Gervais. So yeah, definitely you know, going to the skip don't skip kind of rating. Obviously, I've given this a don't skip. I think this is still a must watch television show, because you know, there's a certain scale that is in there in terms of skip or don't skip. I think this is definitely a must watch, must see TV show. Definitely don't think it's a hidden gem. I wouldn't really put it as that. You know, it's trending on Netflix. That's not an easy thing to do, because there's so many things on there. But yeah, definitely a must-watch thing. Definitely don't skip this. You know, obviously if you've seen the first season, then this is going to be an excellent continuation of that as well. And just more excellent stuff from Ricky Gervais. I'm really, really excited to see what he does next. I have a feeling that this show's probably got one more season. Because it usually does, 2 seasons of things, and then does some specials, or maybe does a 3rd season. I can't quite remember with everything. He did 3 seasons of Ricky Gervais show. He did 2 seasons of The Office, and then like some Christmas specials or whatever. Derek, I think, had 2 seasons and then some specials. So maybe we just get some specials, but I just got a feeling this has got one more season in it, and that's probably it. Whether or not it's like a 3-episode season or something really, really short, or maybe it is just like a 2-episode part, sort of final special, whatever. But there's going to be one more probably edition of this. There's no way Netflix is cancelling this show, although obviously I could be wrong. They've cancelled some big things in the past, but it feels like this is going to be a one more go kind of thing. So definitely recommend it, and go and check it out. So there's my kind of spoiler-free review, and yeah, I'm going to go into some housekeeping now. If you, of course, haven't seen Season 2 of Afterlife, you don't need to leave just yet. I'll give you a spoiler warning when I actually get into spoilers, but I'll see you in a minute for some other stuff. Today's sponsor is Kualu. If you'd like to get started with a domain name and a website today, just click on the link in the show notes, and that will take you over to Kualu to get started. They also have a live support chat system that you can use, which is in the bottom right hand corner. So get started with a new website and domain name today with Kualu. Hey everybody, if you would like to get the ad-free versions of all of our podcasts and support Entertainment Talk along the way, all you need to do is head over to patreon.com/entertainment talk. Sign up either as a creator or as a Patreon, there's no difference there. That's just the option for either becoming a creator now or just staying as a patron for the moment. And then all you need to do is support us at the $1 level tier. That will get you access to all of the ad-free podcasts that we've done in the past, and get you access to all the ad-free podcasts in that month as well. So it's a great way to support us on Entertainment Talk and to get rid of the ads and get your ad-free podcasts. You can also become a patron at the $3 level tier. That gets you access to ad-free podcasts and allows you to redeem a review of a TV show or a film of entirely your choice. That's one per month for either a TV show or a film review, which is at the $3 level tier. As always, thank you very much for listening. Back to the show. Alright, recently on Entertainment Talk, another Let's Play Sundays episode for Moss on PSVR. This is the third of the 4 Let's Plays that are going to be coming out. Of course, the fourth and final one, which will also be episode 40 of Let's Play Sundays, will be released on this Sunday. So have a look at that as well. Great game on the PSVR. Did another TV talk last week with me, Robert, and Bex. We talked about Tiger King, the other Netflix show, or I talked about the one episode, which is the only one that I will watch. Bex talked about The Boys and a bunch of other stuff, and Robert talked about the Masked Singer, on I think Fox in the US, and of course it's on ITV, I think, over there. So we talked about that, and I also gave a lot of praise to Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist as well, rightfully so. Excellent TV show over there. Gaming talk last week as well. We talked about Crysis Remastered from Crytek. If you remember those games, they are getting remastered for the PS4, PC, Switch, and Xbox One, so you can look out for those probably in the summer or something. There's going to be a Peaky Blinders video game, obviously based on the BBC slash Netflix TV show, so that was looking interesting as well. And we also talked about some next gen stuff about delays of the consoles and things like that, so you can have a listen to that as well. On the Run is continuing on HBO season 1 episode 2 called Kiss. Was last week's episode. I will be covering episode 3 late on Wednesday, so have a look out for that as well. Reviewing Westworld for Westworld Season 3 Episode 6. We'll be covering Season 3 Episode 7 on Wednesday, and then we'll just have one more episode left next week, which will be Season 3 Episode 8 for the season finale. Better Call Saul had its season finale, Season 5 Episode 10, and it will be back at some point. We don't know when exactly, obviously, because of things that are going on at the moment, but we suspect between a year or two for that. But that was Season 5 Episode 10 for the last one for Better Call Saul Season 5. Some segments that I broke out of the of some previous podcasts. Me and Barry recently did a horror podcast, and one of the things that I discussed in there was my top 10 favourite horror films, so you could listen to that little segment as well. Also did a DC podcast with Barry recently. One of the things that we talked about in there, one of the segments that I've broken out into its own thing, is the DCEU film ranking, so going from Man of Steel to Birds of Prey, but excluding the Joker, of course, because that's not part of the DCEU. We also discussed the Batman, the costume, casting, the film itself, all that sort of stuff, so we talked about that as well. Chat podcast from March, talking about Entertainment Talk's most successful month, which was March, and also talked about in the second half how the coronavirus could eventually affect Entertainment Talk, given the fact that things aren't filming at the moment, but what are the plans for that situation. I discussed all that on there as well, and that's pretty much what's been happening on entertainmenttalk.org and on podcast platforms. Alright, I'm going to go into spoilers for Afterlife Season 2, and there are some big ones here, so if you haven't seen Season 2 of Afterlife, you're going to want to leave now. If you're listening on a podcast player, go into that, press pause, watch Afterlife, it won't take you too long, and then come back and listen to the rest of this. If you're listening on the website, either press the homepage button or press back, and that should shut the podcast off as well. So I'm going into spoilers now. So yeah, we had, of course, the passing of Tony's dad this season, Ray. But it was interesting the way that was done. You know, Ricky gets there and he gets his phone call from what's her name, Emma, the nurse who, of course, is looking after Ray, Tony's dad, and everything. Of course, they got something going on between them. They haven't quite sort of figured that out, I guess, although they sort of did. She sort of agreed to the Groundhog's Day sort of thing. I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, of course he passed away, and I thought it was interesting with, you know, because he's watching the show that the newspaper sort of put together and all that. and gets the phone call from Emma, says, you need to call me and all that, or gets the text rather saying you need to call me and all that. And you get this very kind of, I don't know if muted response is the right word to use, but this very kind of like, okay, he saw this coming. He's been sick for a while. I think he said 4 years or 4 months or something. I can't remember exactly, but it was some length of time. And kind of said to everyone, look, I don't want any sympathy and everything like that. I thought that was interesting and really well done from Ricky as well. The way that was all acted and everything. But yeah, obviously you get the kind of breakdown at the end of the season, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I thought it was interesting, like, because with his wife in the first season, when he was dealing more with the passing of her then, of course he's still dealing with that, obviously, for the rest of his life. But he would often break down more. And I suppose with human emotions, you get to a certain point where you faced so much grief. The passing of his wife, now the passing of his dad, and he's already feeling kind of down and all that sort of thing, and depressed and stuff. And sometimes for certain people, of course, Tony in this situation gets to a point where they face so much that it's sort of like, okay, I'm beaten down already, I'm not gonna like have a breakdown. And then at some point later on, again depending on the person, but in this situation Tony does do this, breaks down later on, and we see him contemplate suicide as well, or pretty much go to commit suicide. Really, he was going to put those, he said to that woman that, like, okay, they were sleeping tablets. We never saw that for definite. I don't know if he was lying about that. I can't remember exactly if it was revealed what they actually were at some point. They might have been sleeping tablets, but they were pills nonetheless. And he goes to take them, and it's only because, is it the postman that knocks at the door? Someone knocks at the door at the end, don't they? But yeah, that would have been the end of the series pretty much, wouldn't it? Because how would you do this show without Tony? But I thought that was interesting, the way that was all tied together. The relationship with Emma, they weren't really sure what they were going to do there. And it was more about her looking after Ray and all that sort of thing. I thought that was done really well as well. If I'm to point out some weak stuff for the season, because I still think this is a masterpiece, work of art, and pretty flawless. I can't remember his name, but the guy who I pointed out from last season, the one that tries to do the jokes all the time. I'm looking through the cast list here. I can't see his name here. I can't see his name. Is it Brian, a hoarder who above all wants to appear in the local newspaper, later hired to deliver the paper? Is it Brian, the one with the kind of, not long black hair, but sort of, yeah, the one with the black hair who's always kind of going in the newspaper and is always trying to make really bad jokes and all that sort of thing? I'm sure his name is Brian. I just continue to find him a weak point of the series, and this isn't me kind of knocking the show, but he hasn't really had any development. Like, he's sort of stayed the same for the most part. Like, he sort of recognised this season to, like, I don't know, try differently, but he's still ultimately doing the same things. And I don't find the character annoying specifically. He just doesn't do anything useful for the series, I suppose. And that's not a knock on the actor or whatever. It's just, I don't find that character. I get why he's kind of in there. He's meant to be this out of place kind of awkward guy who's trying too hard, basically. But like, nothing that they really do with him worked for me in this season or the other season. It's got David Earl listed as the actor. Let me just highlight his picture here. I think that's him. Yeah. But yeah, it just doesn't work what they do with him. I don't know what to even suggest for them to do him. Maybe just give him some, but give him some character development in some way, and make him change a little bit. I don't really know. I don't know what they should need to really do with him. I don't want him to like be written out or whatever, like to never show up again, and to just sort of dismiss the character. Because I know that Ricky's very capable, obviously, of doing character development, and that's not a knock on like Ricky's writing or anything. It's just the character just doesn't really work, and I know the character's not really supposed to work, so like it's not someone you're supposed to sort of root for or like specifically, but I just would like something different from that character. But that's the weak point of the series again, is Brian. Moving on to some other stuff. I kind of touched upon a bunch of different stuff there. Of course, you had the big scene with the suicide and that, and given the fact that like this hadn't been renewed for a third season, that could have been the end of Tony. I didn't think it necessarily would be, but there was the threat. There was the threat and the possibility that you couldn't really count out necessarily. And that was the. I want to say that was probably the hardest scene of the whole series to watch. Just because this guy's been knocked down again. He's been trying all season long. I don't know how much time in terms of actual real showtime that it's been, but he's tried really hard this season to like get back on the right sort of path, or get himself on a sort of better path and not be just kind of rude to everyone. And he kind of says that to who does he sit on the bench with? I can't remember, but oh, there we go. Anne, an older lady. I'm reading the description here. I'm not calling her an old lady. An older lady and widow who Tony meets at the graveyard. Yeah, the one that he sits basically on the bench with and has some very, very cool conversations with. Or not cool, but interesting conversations with. That's where you get some really rich kind of character development and stuff. Because you don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't really see her outside of those scenes, apart from the funeral at the end where she sort of shows up and asks Tony if he's okay. But I thought that's a way of having a character in very, very few scenes, or not in very few scenes, but in the same scene kind of over and over again, but developing her and and Tony, in the same way in the same scenes. So I think that's quite effective. But yeah, like I said, going back to the whole attempted suicide kind of scene, or near attempted sort of suicide. That was the most effective scene of the whole series for me. I mean, most of this is definitely obviously effective, but yeah, that was probably one that got me choked up the most, because you didn't know if he was gonna go through that, and obviously you got the dog barking and urging him not to do it and that sort of thing. So yeah, really, really tough stuff there. But I thought that was really, really incredibly well done. And that's some really, really sensitive storytelling that you're doing there, like some really sensitive stuff. And again, I thought Ricky pulled it off very well with the writing and acting and all that. Speaking of Postman, he's Joe Wilkinson listed as Postman Pat. I can't remember his name being called out specifically in the show, but I'll just call him the Postman. Yeah, second season gives development to a postman. Didn't think I'd really say that, because he obviously meets up with Roxy, as they call her, the sex worker, Daphne, aka Roxy. I'll just call her Roxy. I'm pretty sure that's what they call her more in the series. But yeah, of course they agree to go on this date in quite strange and funny circumstances. This is probably some of the funnier stuff of this season, particularly. It's the way, like, okay, has she got I think it was Tony that said to the postman, like, oh, would that be a deal breaker if she had AIDS or whatever? And he's like, no, that's fine. I thought that was brilliant as well. That was easily the funniest stuff. All of that sort of storyline was easily the funniest stuff of the season, I thought. And yeah, they gave character development to a postman. They put him on a date, and these are two side characters, kind of, and they put them together, and it worked out really well. I thought that their date was quite fun and quite entertaining to watch and all that, and they agreed to see each other later, and I love his attitude towards, because most people will be like, oh, I can't believe you do that, and, all this sort of thing, whatever. I like his attitude towards it, especially when, like, they finished the date and he's like, oh, shall I walk you home? And she's like, no, I've got to go off to work. And they both know what that means. And he's like, all right, I'll see you later. I just like his kind of gentlemanly, I suppose, attitude towards it. Because he came across before that as kind of, not really a pig, but just a sort of meh kind of person. Just a sort of average guy or whatever. And I thought that worked really, really well. So that was good. So yeah, really, really enjoyed everything that they did there with Roxy and the postman, and I'm looking forward to more of that potentially in, again, whatever we get after this season, whether it's specials or a third season. We'll have to wait and see, of course. You have James, June's son, who starts working at the newspaper. I thought that stuff was okay. I thought it worked well. I was more interested in what's the guy's name in there? Let me see if I can find his name here. It's not Matt. Of course, we've got Matt stuff to talk about as well. Not Valerie. Can't find his name here. It's not George. Not Robbie. Not Brian. Can't find his name. The guy who goes around with Tony and takes the pictures of those people for the newspaper. But I liked all that. I thought that was fairly well done. And yeah, I thought that was some pretty good stuff. So I want to talk about yeah, I guess kind of the final piece, I suppose, is what have you got? Oh, is it Lenny, photographer at Tanbury Gazelle? Yeah, it's Lenny, isn't it? Yeah, he's the photographer, of course. So Lenny, when he was involved with all that, so I thought that was good. I've got a really long cast. It's surprising how many characters there is in this series now that I'm kind of looking up at now at the cast list. So I thought that was good as well. Well, that's a good thing as well. But what was I going to move on to? Kath, when she shows some interest in Matt, the boss at the newspaper, I thought that was well done as well. And of course you've got basically him and this awful therapist. I mean, I don't know if you could call him a therapist really at this point. He's, you know, he was going on more at Matt about excuse me, at his own problems as opposed to what Matt was actually going through. But I liked the way that got kind of ended somewhat, where it's like, okay, I'm just going to sort of leave now, you know, given what the attitude of the therapist. I thought that was done well as well. So I think that's pretty much everything. I'm going a little bit longer here than what I kind of intended to. I know that there's a lot to discuss this season, surprisingly, with 6 episodes at 30 minutes each, but lots of interesting characters going forward in the series. You know, I thought everything was done very well apart from the Brian stuff, which I won't sort of hark on too much or whatever. They just need to kind of give him something different to do, I suppose. But yeah, every character, if not most of the characters, were interesting this season. I thought they all had really great character development this season. I thought what they did with Tony was great and brave as well. Because, I mean, I say brave because it really takes something to write a story that's this sensitive. So that was well done as well. So there you go. But what did you think of this season of Afterlife? Do you think it's better or worse? For me, I'm not really sure. Season 1 was really, really great. Like, I don't know, I think season 1's a slight notch above this. But I still think that the second season's really, really excellent as well. So not knocking the second season at all. It's just the first season. I think the first season was a slight notch above this second season, so that's that as well. But yeah, what do you think of this second season? Do you think it's better, worse? What do you think of Brian? What do you think they could do with him? Do you agree with my kind of thoughts on the different characters and that? What did you think of the final scenes themselves with Tony and the whole suicide stuff? And yeah, let me know what you thought of the season and all that. Matthew at entertainmenttalk.org, Twitter eTalkUK is a contact page and information in your show notes. Yeah, we'll see what happens with Afterlife in the future. Like I said, I suspect that we'll get one more edition of this, or addition to this story, whether it's 2 sort of special episodes or another one more last season. I think we get one more edition of the show nonetheless, so we'll see what Ricky and Netflix decide to do. Because ultimately it's kind of, I mean, it's ultimately up to Netflix. They could cancel this if they wanted to, but you know, it depends what Ricky wants to do as well, because this isn't going to be something that runs for 5 seasons, so we shall see. But you can find all the rest of the content that we've got on entertainmenttalk.org. If you want to support the podcast and support Entertainment Talk, we're on Patreon. Please check out the $1 and $3 level tiers. Amazon affiliate link. If you want to buy stuff on Amazon, we can get a small cut of what you spend, but it won't cost you extra. iTunes feeds, please rate, review, and subscribe to those. Make sure you get subscribed so that you get sent new episodes. What's the other thing as well? Yeah, word of mouth, please tell people that you know about the website and the iTunes feeds. That really helps us out as well. Social media, please share them on Facebook and Twitter, and if you can, put them in different Facebook groups. Streaming, you can watch Bex on Twitch. That's Trista Bytes, B-Y-T-E-S, Trista Bytes on Twitch and on YouTube. Check her out over there as well. I sometimes stream on Twitch as well, and so does David. Mixer, if you want to watch the FIFA streams, I've got a Mixer streaming channel as well. And Robert sometimes streams on Mixer as well. And of course, look out for Let's Play Sundays as well. So thank you all very much for listening, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.